Hello everyone, Jules here. Today I'd like to talk about two books that are quite important and have the approach of the French Esoteric System. And I wanted to talk about these two books in particular today because they're quite important books of the French Esoteric System. And this year in particular I'm going to be focusing on the French Esoteric System. So I wanted to talk about these two particular books that I think are quite foundational for the French Esoteric System. So the first one is Tarot of the Bohemians by Papus, and the subtitle is Absolute Key to Occult Science. So here is the book. It's quite a thick book. And this publication, this has been published by Dover. And I quite like the Dover publications because they particularly specialise in publishing important books from a historical perspective. So this is the publication of 1914 that has been republished, reissued by Dover Publications. And this book has been translated to English from the French, and this was published originally by Ryder and Son, who is quite known as the original publishers of the RWS deck. And this was published in 1914. So Papus was one of the most important French esotericists because he was the leader of the Kabbalistic order of the Rosy Cross. And this book also is very interesting because about halfway through the book there are theories and ideas of other French esotericists. So Papus, his theories and ideas about tarot, his own system, is about half of the book. And then the other half are some really interesting ideas and theories of other French esotericists. And in the back there's a bibliography, so you'll be able to see the original books that these theories and ideas were taken from. There's diagrams in here, there's drawings in here. It's got the history of tarot symbolism. It's a really important book about the French Esoteric System, but it really highlights the importance of Papus and with his ideas and theories. And if you get this book, you'll be able to compare this with the ideas and theories of the Golden Dawn. And the Golden Dawn was actually founded in the same year in England as the Kabbalistic order of the Rosy Cross. Same year, but in France instead of England. So it's really an essential book for anyone who wants a great overview of the French Esoteric System, of the approach, of the other ideas of quite prominent French esotericists of the time. These would have been mostly contemporaries of Papus. So I really do think it's an essential book for people who want to learn about and get a great overview of the French Esoteric System. and it has an index as well. But there's the ideas in this book are just really quite original, really quite amazing. Anyone who thinks that the French Esoteric System was somehow similar to the Golden Dawn, it was really quite different. They also had the theory of the septenary, so the dividing of the 21 major arcana cards into 3 groups of 7. There's the history of tarot symbolism, the symbolical tarot. It goes through all the septenaries. And the meanings of the cards themselves, of the major arcana in particular. But the diagrams are great. Really quite unique diagrams of all kinds of branches of knowledge that this was seen. Tarot was seen to be part of a whole system of knowledge that branched out into different categories. There's even ideas here on how tarot, I suppose you'd say tarot philosophy in a way, how tarot philosophy kind of ties in with Hindu and Egyptian ideas. So I really, really like this book. I think the thing to remember though is that the Hebrew letters in the French Esoteric System corresponded differently to the Golden Dawn. So anyone who gets this book and doesn't quite follow what is happening with the Hebrew letters and corresponding with the major arcana, the French Esoteric System definitely had its own system there. So that is different. It talks about other French decks. There's just so much information in here. And so there's a whole chapter on the Kabbalistic Tarot. But I just find this book fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. You could use this definitely as a reference book. It's easy enough to sort of get into. I think for people who only know the Golden Dawn system, it is different. I think the main thing to remember that I have concluded by now is the two systems cannot be compared because they are just so different. So anyone who's trying to understand this in relation to the Golden Dawn, that's just going to make it a lot harder. It's better to think of this as a totally separate system and starting from scratch like that, starting from the beginning with an open mind. And that is why I particularly am focusing on the French Esoteric System this year. And probably from here on, because I just find this it's a wider system. It's more interesting. After thoroughly knowing the Golden Dawn system for many years, the French Esoteric System has a lot more depth for me. And the interesting part is the French Esoteric System, especially at the time of Papus with the Kabbalistic Order of the Rosy Cross, that has a that has a foundational base from 100 years before. So this is even before Eliphas Levi. So this has a really old tradition, very old tradition. So I thoroughly recommend this book, Tarot of the Bohemians by Papus, and it's a kind of anthology really, because about half the book is actually written by Papus, with his theories and concepts. So people who are interested, this book is quite easy to get, and I really like the Dover publication. And I was just going to have a look at the page count. It's about 350 pages, so it's an essential book. The next one, Tarot of the Magicians by Oswald Wirth, who was a member of the Kabbalistic Order of the Rosy Cross. So this is the French Esoteric System. So for people who kind of need reminding, the Oswald Wirth Tarot. So Oswald Wirth created his own deck, which was a number of years before the Waite-Smith deck. It's based on the Marseille system. It's a great deck. So this is the book written by Oswald Wirth. It's illustrated. The major arcana cards are the Oswald Wirth Tarot cards. Tarot of the Magicians by Oswald Wirth, and introduction by Mary Greer. A great introduction because it gives a great historical background. And the subtitle is The Occult Symbols of the Major Arcana that inspired modern tarot, that inspired the later tarot decks. So the Oswald Wirth deck was created in 1889, and the Waite-Smith deck was around 1910. So this was 20 years before. 20 years before that. So here is Tarot of the Magicians, published by Weiser. Another great book, outlines the esoteric system of the Kabbalistic Order of the Rose Cross, French Esoteric System, and there's a lot of ideas in here. It's a fairly wide branching out into a lot of different areas. So it contains, at the back of the book, it contains pictures of so there's the magician, all in colour, with the French titles, all of the French titles. So there's coloured pictures of the original Wirth deck in the back. And there is a lot in here too. So it goes through quite a detailed symbolism of the major arcana cards, of the 22 major arcana cards. But part one, after the introduction by Mary Greer, it talks about the Kabbalistic Tarot, the Astronomical Tarot. And that's the other thing too. The astrological correspondences were different are different with the French Esoteric System too. So anyone who knows the Golden Dawn correspondences, these correspondences are mostly quite different again. So it talks about forms and colours, that symbolism of form and colour. Tarot in the Hebrew alphabet, because I was talking about before how the Hebrew letters are assigned differently as well with the major arcana cards. So the symbolism for these cards are really interesting, and the order of the major arcana cards are different with the French Esoteric System as well. The Fool with the French Esoteric System does not go first. It starts with the Magician. And the Fool is the last card. Sometimes it is the second last card. Sometimes the Fool comes just before the World card. But with this particular writing, or this particular approach by Oswald Wirth, the Fool is the last card. In most of the French esoteric systems tend to do it that way. They tend to have the Fool last after the World card. And then it talks about cosmogony again, and that's to do with the astronomy again. And one of the most interesting parts of this book, it talks about initiation using the major arcana. That is actually my favourite section of this book. It's an incredibly original and unique system. And they actually would call this the program of initiation as revealed by the tarot. They mean the tarot, the major arcana. Then the tarot seen in the light of Hermetic philosophy, which is absolutely true. By that I mean the Hermetic ideas that are totally assimilated in esoteric tarot, the esoteric approach to tarot. And even the Masonic approach, it's a separate chapter again, the Masonic harmonies in the tarot. But this is a really unique book. Then it has part 4, where it only part 4 is about tarot and divination, which I really like, because for many years now I don't really regard tarot for myself from an esoteric perspective. It's more about study and research, and it's not really, for me, it's about esoteric insights, revelations, inner development. So I haven't used tarot for divination for several years now. In recent years, I just have not. I haven't needed to. It just does not. It's not interesting to me in that way. For me, it's not useful. Not for me personally, it isn't. That's not my interest. So it talks about, there's a chapter here about imagination, which is really important. And then it talks about divination itself, and how to approach that. Gives an example of an interpretation of divination. And then there's the conclusion to that section. And what is really useful at the back of the book, it actually has information. It has a listing of Wirth and Wirth inspired decks. I think that's a great inclusion. There are references, there's an appendix at the back. This book has a lot of diagrams and pictures in here as well. There's notes and references at the back as well. It's really an essential book. It's an essential, totally essential book about the French Esoteric System, and particularly the ideas that Wirth developed and also learnt while he was a member of the Kabbalistic Order of the Rosy Cross. So it really is a great book. So Tarot of the Magicians by Oswald Wirth, really worth getting for people who want to know a lot more about the French Esoteric System, and if you want to compare how different this is to the Golden Dawn system, and if you are interested in learning this and using this as a system, it's a really great book. And there's, as I was saying, there's just so much information in here. Okay, but they are two great books that I think are essential for the French Esoteric System, and I will put some details below the video. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.